All right. Well, welcome back to the Chairman's Corner. I'm TRCCA President David Covey, and with me is the TRCCA Executive Director Dwayne Wright and the TRCCA Training Director David Luther. And so this is just a round table of us discussing ideas.
Hey, it is a round table. Have you noticed that? It is a round table.
Yep.
And it's red.
It's red, a red round table. It's not. We could get a square table, but
No, this is a round table.
we need a round table discussion.
All the square tables are blue.
Oh, exactly. Today we're going to be talking about data, and our organizations as county parties and the state party run on data. And the more data you have, the better you're able to understand who your voters are and who to engage with and turn out the vote then before elections. So we're going to have a discussion about that and talk about what's been helpful, what we've learned over time. So I'm going to start off with Dwayne Wright and kind of open up the discussion.
Well, data is a big deal. We actually locally, we started out using GOP Data Center, and we pulled records down from that, and then we, especially when it was time to make phone calls, we noticed that the records were not really effective for us at that time. So, there's always a way around to get to the data. You just have to be persistent. And so what we did was we went down to the EA office, and we really tracked during the primaries in particular. We track who's voting, because you can get those records, and it's, especially in a rural county, it's not that expensive at all. We've never used an outside vendor, but I do know that there's some effective ones out there that do a good job. Now, I've scrubbed data before using some techniques that I came up with. In particular, we were doing robocalls one time, and I noticed that the robocall would not call like the cell phone numbers were delineated separately from landlines. And so what I was able to do was just run some little, hey, it's time to vote, real short, sweet deal, because it wasn't expensive. Hey, election time coming up, just reminding you. Well, what that did was it gave me a spreadsheet that told me which were cell numbers and which were not. And so I was able to
landlines probably rejected it.
Right, yeah, and I was able to scrub those out and then pull them off into a separate deal. So because we're a small county and we don't have a whole lot of tech-savvy people, what I've had to do is take on the mantle of figuring this stuff out. And I do a lot of automated things just because it makes it easier on me to have information drop into a spreadsheet, and then we can look at that spreadsheet because it's already done, and we're not having to manually enter all this stuff in. I had a volunteer, Linda was here a while ago, and she was asking me how to do that because we had gotten a report, a new mover report, which those are valuable, new mover report, and we were putting it into our system so that they would automatically get our notices for meetings whenever we come in. And people love it. One caution, we get data at the rodeos. We do a giveaway, and we have the little slips of paper. We do some really old school stuff like that, which works really well. But we also have figured out that not everyone's handwriting is conducive to a spreadsheet. So, so what we really like to do is in our year-round headquarters again, is to have an actual kiosk on the computer, and we bring them in, and that's the first thing, because when people come to visit, there's only a certain length of time that they're going to sit here and be comfortable, especially if they've never been here before. So as soon as they come in, I call that like the honeymoon phase of data acquisition. You bring them, hey, come over here and sit down and fill this out. If you try to do it after they've been here a while and they're trying to head out the door, it doesn't work. Yeah. But when they first come in, and get them and help them, and they can type it in. That way we can make sure and get the correct. It's an L, not an I, or all that kind of stuff. So data drives what we do, and it just makes us more efficient and effective. When we first started, we block walked everybody. Now we don't, because we know where to block walk.
Yes.
And we know what the data is. Like I said, unfortunately, we're a small county. We go get the voting records and print it out and then put it into the system. And we keep the system updated. When people come to our meetings, has anything changed? Nope, we're all good. And believe me, it's gotten to the point we put out a monthly newsletter where if somebody's not getting our newsletter, we figure out quick if it's spam, where it dropped into their spam, or else somehow they're not in the system, or they hit unsubscribe on accident, which people do. So data acquisition, aside from from finance and funding, I think it's a close second. But you can also use data to not have to use as much money.
Yes.
If you're really good with data, you can cut down your expenses quite a bit.
And I think for our county chairs watching, there's people on all sides of the spectrum. Probably the more rural counties, they're just trying to figure out how to get their email list where they can notify people of monthly meetings. Then you can move into the newsletter phase as you build your contact list.
Right.
And I guess what I would tell new chairs, and I'll kind of give this over to Dave, is you may have come in and the last county chair did not hand over their list, or they didn't have a list. Start where you are.
That's right.
And start building your contact list. That's one of the most important things that a county chair can do. When you say data, you think, big data.
The guy on Star Trek.
Yeah, the guy, exactly. But
the visor.
There's basic information collecting and keeping it organized, just where you can contact your volunteers, your precinct chairs, is important.
And every chair should know the magic number. Okay, I know how many people I need to talk to in a precinct to get a precinct person elected, or countywide to get a countywide elected. So my goal when I set out a plan for the party at the very beginning was I want a 1,500 name solid email list to begin with. And we achieved that early on. And because we're able to keep that communication going, even if you're not using it, you're not weaponizing it, which is not what we were trying to do. We just wanted to have the leverage to know that we could reach enough voters
to make a difference.
Yeah. And that's how we flip the county.
Yeah.
So it's nice for the electeds to know that you have a really good list.
Contact list. It is. We'll talk about relevance and making the party relevant. Dave, what have you seen?
Okay, so my theory is that every county should build and manage their own data.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is you have to have somewhere to start. So you can start with GOP data. GOP data center is great if you live in a county that's nearby a large city. But if you're out in a very rural area, it's not going to be as great because it's being updated by what's been done in that county. The work that other campaigns have put into that county finds its way into GOP data. But if you're in one of the counties like we were before Houston started to move to us, that data is not all that good. It's in there, but the phone numbers are not always right, and there's still a lot of gaps. But it's a place to start. So what I try to tell people is look, you start with what you have. Now, Dwayne made a reference to something that's extremely important in rural counties, and that is capturing your data, capturing data from other sources, from your work at fairs and rodeos and other public events, to have a bowl there and to have Miss Estella's famous chocolate cake.
Yep.
Win Miss Estella's famous chocolate cake, put your name in here, and capture data that way. That's one way of doing it. But the other way is to invest some money from the county party into some commercial data. There is some really, really solid, good data out there. And let me just say that the way this works is there are companies who spend gazillions of dollars capturing data from all over the country. And it's not just from voting, but it's cross-referenced to the voting. So you can ask a company how you say, I want this kind of data, and you can get it. Now, here's an example. In my county, which is a county of 60,000, we were able to get 10,000 voters, 9,500 households, and emails for around $600. So when you're talking about raising money for data, which is, by the way, the lifeblood of what you're trying to do, you can get emails for around $200, $250 for your entire county if you're a smaller county. Now, if you're a larger county and you've got more, obviously it's going to cost more money. But you also should be able to raise more money. So there are ways to do this that don't require a lot of work. You can spend money. But if you don't have money to spend, then you do the work. But you can do it conjunctively. But what I'm trying to encourage all county parties to do is develop, cultivate, and manage your own data. When you own your data, number one, it's better data, and number two, it's your data. So you don't have to go to anybody begging for data. You don't have to go and spend a lot of money with the company to give you more data that you might need in the coming election cycles. Have your own data, manage your own data, own it. It becomes a resource that other people will want to get from you, and that you can exchange for money or relevance or whatever you want to do. But making your party effective in the big picture starts with engaging voters. And the way you engage voters is to know where to go and who to talk to. And that's where data comes in. So if you do anything else, own and manage your own data. That to me is one of the most critical things we can do as county chairs.
I know there was one of the larger counties who had such an effective list, an email list, that candidates would rent spots on the calendar right around election time. They would rent spots on the calendar to have email blasts sent out on their behalf. The CEC would vet the ad, and then they would put it through, and then they charged them. And they were making, I'm thinking during season, they were making $10,000 a month off of using their list that way. And so, you seed the well a little bit, and then you can actually pay off dividends in several different ways.
That's where for me, I have a master list of every person we come in contact with, no matter where. But then I have different tabs you can break out, and you've got your list of, okay, these are the people that will work events. They'll do a parade. They'll do a festival. Then I've got my people who will put a yard sign in their yard. And so we can put up, 500 yard signs on the same day, because we have the list of people to let them know, hey, come get your yard sign, put it up. And so when signs can go up, they go for Republicans, they go up on the same day. You can begin to segment and break your data down. So that's to me, as Dave said, owning your own data is incredibly important, and understanding what your data is. And I've had new county chairs who have asked me, well, why would I even do an event at the fair? Why would I pay to have a booth there? Well, one, the visibility, that's hard to measure, but two, the pie example, drop your name in for a chance to win blank.
Or some gift cards from Walmart if you don't have somebody to make you a cake, but something to get them to come in. Marketing companies for centuries have used the old win something, put your name in and win something. And that's and basically what they're going to give you when you win it is nothing compared to the value of your name and your address and your information. Well, so people have been using it for years and it's worked. Why use something that doesn't work?
So plus you get engagement with the community as well.
Engagement.
Absolutely.
I mean, you cover so many bases.
Right.
And I think a lot of the parties, they get wrapped up like in Reagan dinners and things like that with pulling off the event and fundraising, and they'll drop the ball on data collection. The Trump campaign with the rallies, data collection, that was a brilliant way to get a lot of data that way.
That data is still out there being used.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
So,
Right. I still get the daily text from the Trump campaign, man.
yeah.
Ever since I went to the Houston rally.
Well, since we don't have any sponsors, my brain is really racked trying to figure out some specific names. I know there's some good companies out there. I know David has mentioned a couple.
Yeah, there's a couple of big companies that that provide data. The consultants use companies, and I've used the consultants to provide data for programs that I've done rather than me providing the data. I'm looking at right now getting the data myself and using the data for what I need it for, not necessarily going through consultants because of the cost.
Right.
So, but there is there are numbers of reliable data providers out there. But I would say, as you select a data provider, you need to be cognizant of the type of algorithms they use and how effective their data has been. Find that out. And also, you got to remember that while we live in a partisan world, and the data providers act like they don't, but they do. Mm-hmm. And so there are data providers out there that lean more to the Democrat side and more to the Republican side. And so, and that's one of those things that you just have to talk to people that are in politics to know the difference, because they're not going to tell you the way. All they're going to tell you is we're here to sell data. That's what we do. But there is a political component that comes to that, and we should be using data providers who support Republicans over Democrats, not solely, but whose management leans toward our side. Because if we don't, we're going to get, as they say, hosed. And I don't want to be hosed. So, yes, I'm not, in deference to our executive director, I'm not going to name any data providers that I know of, but there are out there.
In the next videos, we might have some names.
That's right. In subsequent videos, we may actually have some recommendations to make, but there has to be some phone calling done first.
Right.
So,
well, and speaking of phone calls, that's a great segue. What we're working on now is kind of going away from emails and more into texting. Just the percentages, and I know as a TRCCA, we've done some programs, and it's by far more cost effective and just more effective.
Yeah.
Totally.
The email open rates are what, around 25-30% most.
Well,
cases.
see, we're fortunate. I think the industry standard runs around 20-25. We run about 60, but that's because we don't blast people, and we're tied through the community of Mobilize, and people can tell Mobilize how often they want to be notified of stuff.
Right.
So they have that control over how slam their inboxes get, you know.
Well, the good part about a text is once you get a text, you typically read it even before you understand who it's from.
Right.
So even if you're
It's
like,
too
no, I
late.
didn't want to
You
open
already
that
got
one.
it.
I already read it. I already heard from that candidate. Well, I hope that helps you. Data is king. You have to be collecting it and working on it. Both small data, there are other options you can use to subsidize the information you're bringing in, but never lose focus when you have events to collect that, get those sign-up sheets, and don't forget you can reach out to us. Reach out for help. Ask if you need assistance. Email, call us. We're more than glad to help here at the TRCCA.
That's the byway.
Yeah.
That's the byway.
Okay, that's it. Cut.
So,
We've done the byway.
Yeah, going off screen now.
The highway is this way. And the
byway
is
So,
right.
you guys are going to be known for your waves.
Yes.
Your style of wave.
The red wave.
Yes.
The red wave that you have.
I had that. How long did that one run?
That was 25 minutes.
See, there you go. I told you we could
Oh,
fill.
man.